How you feeling?
Like shit.
Yep.
It
Not
could
the
be worse.
Rona.
No, and it's not the man cold, so
Yeah,
I'm okay.
We wouldn't be able to do this.
I know. I'd be on my deathbed.
If you have the man cold, we'd be
over.
out of commission.
Mm-hmm.
At least 4 months.
Yeah.
That's deadly.
I know. I've witnessed it.
Listen, it is not something that you want. It is not something that I wish on my worst enemy, but all men get it. And when they get it, it's serious.
Oh, man.
It's terrible. Anyways.
I'm pretty sure I don't have coronavirus. I think it's just a very mild cold. I don't have a fever or cough or anything like that.
That's what they say.
So, yeah.
They say that's how it starts.
I already am feeling better than I was yesterday, so.
Cool. I don't think you had the Rona because I'm
think
fine.
So either. Yeah, I know.
And she's fine.
Mm-hmm. She had a sniffle
who is
too.
Sleeping.
Yeah. Not napping, but she's sleeping.
So Thursday, she definitely had a stuffy nose. I wasn't home because I was working. You told me about this. And when I came home, she was fine. We're talking about our daughter. And
who's 2 and back in daycare.
I'm putting her to bed, sneezed right in the face. And I said, all right, well, I'm getting whatever you got.
Yep.
And I had a super mild case, and I'm fine. I'm fine now.
Surprised you got through it.
There's nothing to get through. Anyways, welcome to While She's Napping. I am Adam.
And I'm Cindy.
Hey, so last week we talked about ghosts.
Yeah.
And I just want to give a shout out. We don't normally shout out other podcasts like on this platform on our podcast, but we should. Shout out to MySpace with You who took. Do you want to take this one? Because
Sarah. Sarah and Chris. You guys are fucking awesome. And we were not expecting that video. I was like, what is this? It's really cool. I had never, so I guess it's a program or I sound like such an old person right now, I'm sure, but it's a thing called Cameo where I guess celebrities do personalized shout outs upon request. So
yes.
I had never seen it before. But yeah, one of the hosts of Ghost Hunters shouted us out and told us that we should believe in ghosts because he's been
okay.
Like
that being said, first of all, this has nothing to do with the gesture. The gesture itself was incredible. We thank you guys. If you're looking for a podcast to listen to with another married couple that is, I don't want to say super similar. They definitely have their own voice. They definitely have their own little nuances that are much different than us in a good way, right? Because we're boring. They're
hilarious.
Yes. Download the MySpace with You, or rather subscribe to the MySpace with You podcast. But now, what is this? Ghost Hunter?
Yeah.
Ghost Hunters? Okay. He said, and I quote, he said, I've been searching for them for 16 years. They're real. Well, you haven't fucking found them, bro. You've been looking for them for 16 years.
I think they would argue that they have found evidence.
That's not what
the
he
whole
said.
Point.
He said, I've been looking for them for 16 years.
I think you're reading too much into it.
He didn't say, I found them along the way. He said, I've been looking for 16 years. Well, bro, maybe just you can't find them because they're not there.
Okay, whatever you say. I think you're reading too much into the language there.
Maybe. Well, look, jokes aside, we appreciate the gesture. We will hit you back somehow with something. Maybe if we get the listing or whatever, we'll send you some Rhode Island stuff.
Oh yeah,
Maybe.
yeah,
that'd be cool. Anyways, speaking of thank yous, hey, so we'd like to thank everybody that has listened up until this point. If you've clicked on this episode because you're interested in the subject matter and you haven't listened to our show before and you have no idea what we just referenced for the past 4 minutes, we welcome you to the show. We encourage you to dig through the archives and check out any episode that might tickle your fancy, any episode that you think the subject matter may appeal to you. We encourage it. These episodes aren't dedicated to the time they were recorded. They're pretty much, I don't want to say timeless, because eventually they're not going to be relevant. But for the current time, at least for the next 2 years, they might be relevant. Maybe.
Okay.
Right. Maybe.
Random, but okay.
Maybe. The whole point of this is so our daughter can listen to these 10, 20 years from now.
Yeah.
Saying you guys were fucking lame. Anyways, if you're listening to this for the first time, we welcome you. If you stumbled upon us arbitrarily or maybe through Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, we welcome you to the show. We hope you enjoy it. Specifically, we would like to thank people within the United States, Canada, Australia, Germany, United Kingdom. The reason why I said Australia weird is because Austria has now listened to the show. Mexico, and of course, Nepal, you're still with us. Specifically within the U.S., shout out to Rhode Island. You guys are still our top listeners in the United States. Massachusetts, California, Virginia, Florida, Texas, New Hampshire, Connecticut, New York, Illinois, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Utah, Georgia, Nebraska, Delaware, Arizona, Minnesota, Missouri, Mississippi, Montana, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Washington State, welcome back, and of course, parts unknown. So we're pretty much like when we started this podcast, it was the coasts that were, and now the Midwest is starting to fill in. Yes. The shading on the United States map is happening.
That's cool.
Hey, so if you want to hit us up on our socials, you can do so. Cindy, why don't you take it away?
Facebook.com / while she's napping. We usually post our polls and anything that we're looking to get feedback on before an episode there on the Facebook page. We also put them on our Instagram account in the stories. So that's at While She's Napping on Instagram, or on Twitter at She's Napping Pod, or you can email us whileshe'snapping@gmail.com.
You're struggling.
I am.
We'll try to make this one
I have my
seamless.
tea and but I'm just tired.
Well, this is why the breaks are clutch.
Yeah.
In between.
I'm going to need it.
All right. Well, hey, so today's subject matter, you're going to take the ball with this, so you're definitely
great timing.
It's about women's reproductive rights. That's what we're doing today.
Yeah.
How do you want to structure this?
Well, so I can give a brief explanation of why we decided to do this topic this week.
Yeah.
So last week I decided to do some calling for the election, to volunteer for phone banking. That's the word. So
it's kind of like sperm banking, but for phones.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay, so I was phone banking for vote
like you
safe.
Store it.
Oh my God.
You store the phones in a freezer, and you get paid $50 for every phone load you store.
You're so weird. Okay.
Well, if you think about it, the old school phones with the wire, with the cord, it's like a sperm tail.
Okay. Oh yeah, there's the image. Okay, so I was calling voters in the state of Wisconsin. It's one of the swing states that could really make or break the election in November. So I had never done this before, and I was really nervous to just cold call people because I hate getting those calls myself, even though I don't mind participating and answering questions in general. But
yeah, but the boomers love them.
So that's what I learned. But I did have a couple of people who sounded on the younger end too, who I had ended up having good conversations with. But anyway, so my very, very first call to someone was this guy who it totally took me by surprise because I was expecting to get hung up on.
Well,
really.
Hold on. I want to interject here.
Okay.
Because this story needs some background.
Okay. The backstory needs a backstory.
Yes.
Okay.
Because about 2 days before that, I actually asked you, I said, do you think there is someone that is not racist or whatever that could vote for Trump? And you said there are a bunch of nuances in that. I can't just base that answer, like prima facie, give you an answer to that. So I said, all right, well, maybe if you consider it this way, do you think there could be someone that is all for Biden and would vote for Biden, but the number one thing that is his priority is pro-life, right? So he says, he or she in this scenario, I'm for Black Lives Matter. I'm for police reform. I'm for education reform. I'm for all these things that are basically a left-leaning thing. Yeah. But the issue that trumps all of that for me is pro-life.
Sure.
And whoever the presidential candidate that is pushing a pro-life agenda, no matter what, I'm voting for that guy. And you said that would never happen.
I don't remember the conversation. I think maybe I was exhausted from the first question about the racism one. But I don't think that would
turns out it happened.
Yeah, so the first person I call while I'm phone banking in the swing state is a person who is in this exact situation. And so I think, so I know that it would happen because there are single issue voters.
Quote, that would never happen.
Okay, I don't remember that, but whatever. So yeah, Adam is loving this right now. So the first call I make is to this guy who, the first question that I was, told to ask is, we were trying to figure out what are the issues that are most important to the voters in these swing states. And so that was the question. What is the issue of today that you are most concerned about? And he said, sanctity of life. And I was like, oh shit. Like I wasn't ready for this. And I asked him to be a little more specific.
I quit the sperm bank.
Yeah. And so what he said was, I have oftentimes heard of when people talk about the pro-life stance, the pro-life position, it's very hyper-focused on abortion. That's like the critical issue. And I've oftentimes heard a pushback to that is, well, what about life after birth? Like, are you pro-life or are you just pro-birth? Like, do you care about the baby after it's born and all the other things that we should be doing to support life at all stages, not just before they're born? And I was a little taken aback to hear him preempt the conversation with that context of saying, I care about life at all stages, from conception to natural death at any age, like any stage of life, pre-birth or post-birth. And I care about people and the sanctity of life at all stages. And so he set me up to that's normally what I would probably have responded with. But he already put it out there, and he still was struggling so much with this issue and how he's going to vote. And so it just, I was not prepared for that conversation. I hadn't gotten the jitters out. I didn't really know the system that I was using. And, so I feel like I totally fucked up and did not take advantage of the opportunity to have a really great conversation with someone who was in that position. And so I wanted to try to kind of talk through it on the podcast and think more about what I would say if I ever had the opportunity to talk to someone like that again.
Right. The thing that came to my mind when you first told me that immediately, I said, well, this person is obviously, if the sanctity of life is what is most important to him, he would lean Trump because of pro-life issues. But the thing is, for the past 4 years, people are still getting abortions legally. Right? And so there's no end to that. That's not going to end if Trump gets reelected.
No, but I think the issue is that if he has the opportunity to appoint another Supreme Court justice, they could overturn Roe v. Wade, which is the issue.
If Ginsburg,
yes.
Yeah. Well, maybe.
No, I think that's the most important thing is the Supreme Court justices, the appointing of them, because they're lifetime appointments. So even if Trump is only in office for another 4 years, he appoints a justice who's on the young end of the spectrum like Kavanaugh, and they're there for life.
If I'm not mistaken, Kavanaugh actually upheld a pro-choice.
I read that too. Yeah, but he's also been the deciding vote in some things that have gone the other way.
Sure, but I'm saying in terms of reproductive rights, I think, I could be wrong about this, but I think he's upheld I could be wrong.
Yeah, I can't remember. But I mean, that was kind of the reason why people in the pro-life movement were so excited about his appointment, because he's a conservative pro-life judge.
Well, look, how do you want to break this down? Because for me, I don't want to say I don't have a horse in this race, because being
you don't have a
father,
uterus in this race?
Well, no. I'm saying, obviously, because I have a fucking dick, it's not going to affect me personally, but as a dad, right,
of a daughter,
this is going to have some sort of an impact on me indirectly,
right?
So it is important to me. when you laid this out, I don't want to, dissuade the conversation or make it seem that this is going to be boring. But for me, it's just sort of an obvious, yeah, of course it should be up to the individual. It shouldn't be up to old white men in robes. To me, that just seems so obvious. But obviously, I'm unfamiliar with the nuances that not only you as a woman, and that's not me trying to put a gender, identification to you in terms of what your interests are, but how this affects you. You're obviously going to have your finger on the pulse more than I would. So
yeah, well, I think part of the reason why I was so struck by that conversation and hearing that guy talk is because I could hear the struggle in his voice of how much he was, back and forth, and how badly he wanted to vote Democratic for all of the other issues that he was concerned about. But this was the one thing that was tripping him up. And so I guess I can so obviously, yes, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be any secret to anyone who's been listening to the podcast or knows us at all that we're both pro-choice, like pretty firmly.
I'm not pro-life. I just don't.
I said pro-choice.
I know. Yeah. So I'm not saying you're wrong, but I don't necessarily agree with that statement. I'm sort of apathetic to it. I don't.
But you believe women should have the right to choose.
Yes,
when it comes
but I
to their
also
pregnancy.
Understand the opposite. So
that's what I was going to say.
I sort of take a step back and say, sure, because it doesn't affect me directly, I'm sort of apathetic towards it.
Well, that's why I'm saying, for the sake of argument, I want to put ourselves in the position of people who feel this way, and
sure,
in some ways, I'm sympathetic to it, because ultimately I think for me it's a no-brainer that women should have the choice when it comes to this, and we're going to go through all the reasons why. Yeah. But at the same time, as someone who has had a child and who felt that instant connection and love for her as a person before I ever knew anything about her, or knew even if that she was her, you know what I mean? Like, from the second I saw that second line on the home pregnancy test, I felt connected to her, mm-hmm, even though that I was like 5 weeks pregnant, I think.
Sure, yeah.
So I guess from that perspective, having that experience and I can't imagine that I would have ever made the choice to terminate the pregnancy, but I also recognize that I was in a position where I didn't feel that I even had to consider making that choice. And so I can't really put those shoes on of being in that position. And so I think that's where the argument comes in, where people who fall really solidly into the pro-life position, they believe that life begins at conception. That's a human being. Doesn't matter the gestation, doesn't matter if it's 5 weeks or 40 weeks. It's the same thing to them.
Yeah, I can't get on board with that. And we've had these conversations before, and I'm surprised you don't hold that position, because as a scientist, I could have sworn that you would, because the way I look at it, as if you look at a sunflower seed, and if I have a sunflower seed in my hand and I say to you, this is a sunflower, your intuition would say, no, that's a sunflower seed. It can be a sunflower. It could turn into a sunflower, but right now it is not. You, as a scientist, would say, no, genetically and biologically, that is a sunflower. And I would say, my intuition is telling me this is not a sunflower. And that's how I look at conception. Like, at that moment where the sperm and the egg hit, that's not a human being to me. It has the potential to turn into one, but my intuition is saying, not yet, it's not.
Well, I think that's where the gestational cutoffs come into play. And I think, so I used to say that. I used to say, if you don't say life begins at conception, when do you draw the line? Like, at what point? Like, to me, that was the only tangible, obvious, this is when you can distinctively say this is a new life, because
that's different than saying it's a human.
I know.
Oh, okay.
I'm getting there.
All right.
But I'm saying I used to think that just because I didn't know enough about the developmental journey of a fetus or of a pregnancy, of gestation. Like I didn't understand. And this always brings me back to, I've seen these like silly memes and cartoons on social media of people posting from the pro-life stance of like a picture of a woman and mocking the whole like my body, my choice mantra. And it's like pointing to the woman and it says, this is your body. And then it points to her stomach with the fetus inside. And it says, this is someone else's body. What don't you get? Saying the woman doesn't have the right to decide to murder her fetus or child or whatever, because it's not her body. But before a certain point in gestation, that fetus is completely dependent on being inside the womb of that woman.
It's symbiotic.
Yes, it's not a viable fetus. So that's kind of
symbiotic. Sorry, because the woman doesn't depend on the fetus.
You're right. Yes. So, yeah, I guess that's why there's the whole fetal viability cutoff with gestation, and so this kind of. Well, I guess we'll save the political positions for the second half.
It's just, I do think there is a distinction between saying life begins at conception and that's a human at conception. And that's what I was trying to say when I'm interjecting. I'm not denying that that thing is alive. It most certainly is
not on
alive.
Its own.
Right. I'm just saying it is a living thing, but it is not yet human. Right. And that's what makes me turn away from, that's what makes me lean pro-choice, because I'm saying, it's not a human being, so it can't constitute as murder, right? We don't say killing of excess blood cells is murder. We don't say killing of bacteria in our body is murder. These things are alive, but we're not describing it as murder. This thing, in my intuitional is not even a word, based on my intuition, tells me it is not a human being, therefore it's not murder. But I'm not denying that thing, that organism is alive. It is alive.
Right.
I don't doubt that, but it's not human. For me, there's a level of awareness that you need to have in order. This is just my opinion. This is not based on science. There's a level of awareness, self-awareness that you need to have in order to become, conscious, I think you can say, right?
Yeah, but I know where you're going with this, but I think there's an easy argument to be made that someone who's in a coma or a vegetative state they're still a human being.
You're right.
And it's illegal to kill them.
Yeah, I know. It's a slippery slope. There is no bang on answer for this. And that's why this is such a contested issue. But I just trust my intuition on things, and I don't consider myself crazy. So I know there are a lot of crazy people that if they trust their intuition, it's bad news. But for me, I just keep getting stuck on that sunflower seed analogy. That's not a sunflower. It's a sunflower seed. And the fetus is not a human. It's a fetus.
Yeah, I agree with you. The reason why I'm sympathetic to it is that I felt that connection with a non-human, if you describe it that way, like you know what I mean? Like I felt that connection with our daughter from the second I knew I was pregnant.
You felt that connection with a living thing inside of you. You didn't feel that, and I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody, but I've heard a lot of people say, can you imagine you have aborted your baby? And I say, no, because now I know my baby. Right? If I aborted my baby, if we aborted the baby that was inside of you when she was, I don't know, say 2 months in the womb, right? Not 2 months old, obviously, but just 8 weeks, we'll say.
Yeah.
8 weeks in the womb. I wouldn't have known who she is. So I wouldn't have established that relationship in which I said, I murdered our daughter. I wouldn't necessarily have that connection. I wouldn't feel that way. And I think that's what makes this such a murky issue. When we think about human beings, and if a human being is unfortunately murdered or accidentally killed, we have an established connection based on history with this person. We have memories with this person. We've had experiences with these people or this person. We've had good times, bad times, all of that. When a fetus is 8 weeks in the womb, there is none of that.
I know, but what I'm saying is even in that moment, I felt connected.
I'm
our
not
child.
denying that. I'm just saying obviously the connection is stronger now
Obviously.
that we have
Yes,
met her.
of
And I'm not
course.
saying this isn't a traumatic experience for the woman. I don't
Oh
want
yeah,
that
and
to
of
get
course,
lost.
I'm sure there's got to be a ridiculous amount of emotion and probably some regret. There's always probably a what
of
if.
course.
I mean,
yeah.
but
I
it
just don't
doesn't-
think
yeah.
it constitutes as murder.
right? No, and sometimes I think given the this is the other thing is I feel like people tend to. On the pro-life side, I've heard the argument. I don't mean to make it sound like I'm broad brushing against or saying this about everybody who falls into one of these camps. I know that there's a
This
variety
is just
of
the majority.
but this is like a general
the narrative.
Yes, the general narrative that people are afraid that if abortion is readily available and legal and safe, that women will use it as a form of birth control. And be like, well, there's no point in practicing safe sex or trying to prevent getting pregnant because, whatever, I can just get an abortion.
Yeah, that's unreasonable
Yeah,
to me.
no, that's what I'm saying. Women aren't going to use this as birth control. Speaking back to how traumatic it must be, they still have to go through a physical medical procedure. They have to still deal with, the recovery from that, even though I know it's a safe and effective medical procedure at this point, but with low risk. But I mean, it's not something to be taken lightly. I feel like that's so insulting when people say, well, women will just use it as birth control.
No, I can't get there. I don't see, and correct me if I'm wrong, another one of their worries is that they're going to do super late term abortions. I could be wrong on the math, obviously, the statistics. Obviously, you would know better than I, but the majority of abortions that are committed, is that the
performed?
There you go. They're not late term.
Yeah. So I looked this up from the CDC because this is one that goes right up my ass.
Can I say this? This
Yeah.
may be murky. The majority of legal abortions.
Well, they only
late.
have the statistics from
That's
legal, from what's reported.
So I can only give you the.
Of course,
Yeah,
but
okay,
there's
yes.
also a lot of statistics and evidence to show that illegal abortion or the slang term is like back alley abortion or people trying to do it themselves back before Roe v. Wade when it was illegal, that it was like 1 in 8 pregnancies or something resulted
it's sort
in
of impossible to record.
well, I know the data is loose, yes, but I'm saying
here.
maternal mortality was very high when women were trying to give themselves abortions,
Sure,
or seek them not from a medical
I can
professional.
imagine.
Yes,
Yeah.
so that has been drastically reduced. Women aren't dying
Sure.
from trying to give themselves an abortion. So it's according to the CDC, I think this was up to like 2016. A late term abortion, which is considered after 20 weeks, so the second half of pregnancy, are extremely rare. It said that 91% of abortions were performed less than 13 weeks.
Right.
7.7% were performed between 14 and 20 weeks. So that's still not considered late term. That's before 20 weeks, which is
Like
kind of what I was saying. That's like
months.
and that's like the fetal
Halfway.
viability threshold. So generally, if a baby is born prematurely before 20, or I think it's maybe even 24 weeks, it's somewhere in the mid 20 week range.
Sure.
They generally can't survive. They don't survive.
Yeah.
So the amount that were performed at past 21 weeks gestation was 1.2%.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
I mean, and my whole thing is for this 1.2% of women seeking an abortion who end up having it after 21 weeks, this must be the most traumatizing, agonizing decision of their life.
Well, I imagine a lot
this.
of those are based on medical concerns.
That, right. So they found out that their child had, like you were saying, there's some...
Or the woman couldn't survive.
Or the maternal health of the mother's health, the well-being of the unborn child, some medical prognosis that informs this as being the right decision. And the other piece to that is I feel like the 1% that have to make this agonizing decision, I wonder what circumstances made them have to wait that long.
Right.
Like no woman voluntarily goes through more than half of her pregnancy and then decides to terminate. because.
I don't want to. You just said you don't want a broad brush thing. I don't want to do that either. I'd say the vast majority, but I'm not going to deny that there are some psychopaths out there.
Okay, but
I'm just saying,
that's not even worth talking about. I'm talking about reasonable people.
Yes, you're right.
In general,
I'm saying some people, very, very few,
okay, but
could fall into that category.
Fine, but if they're a psychopath and they're gonna do this just because they get a thrill, like, what do you mean? Like,
I'm just saying, I don't know the reason. I don't know.
But I'm saying for the sake of this conversation being not between you and me, I'm saying in general about making laws and having people vote based on this issue.
The vast majority of them, yes.
Right. I'm saying to worry about that. That's like worrying about serial killers when
you just. All I'm trying to do is demonstrate you didn't want to broad brush something.
Yes.
I kind of want to avoid that here too. I don't want to just broad brush an entire percentage because it's very low. I'm not going to deny that. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying it's conceivable that this could happen. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, fine. Fair enough. I just don't even think it's really worth acknowledging that because I just feel like this isn't an experience that anybody wants.
You're right.
Anybody asks for to be put in this situation. And to judge people or to judge women and to make the leap from 1% of abortions are done in the late term to saying we shouldn't have abortion be legal at a federal level because women will use it as birth control.
Yeah,
it just doesn't.
It's a leap.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
All right, we're just over the halfway point. Do you want to take a break right here? Rest that throat.
Yeah, getting us some more tea.
All right, hang tight. So what makes me on the fence about this, and I'm leaning pro-choice, right? But what makes me on the fence about this is I hear arguments for safe and responsible sex, and it's kind of hard to counter that. So, again, I'm for the pro-choice. I think that it is up to the women, if it's a couple that they're making a joint decision. But in terms of legal status, it's a woman thing, right?
It's ultimately the woman's choice.
So,
yes.
This isn't maybe an exercise or a response to having an abortion or not having an abortion. It's just more of a curiosity thing. If you're going to have sex and you don't want a child, why aren't you pulling out?
So I literally have in my notes, common arguments, quote, if you're going to have sex, you just need to be careful.
Well, why isn't that valid? Shouldn't you be careful if you don't want to have a child?
Of course. But first of all, I mean, the most obvious is that birth control isn't 100%. No form of birth control is 100%.
I know.
Okay, so what happens to the 0.1 or 1% of women who get pregnant even when they did everything they were supposed to do?
No. I'm saying if you're not taking precautions and you're not ready to have a kid, why are you nutting inside the person?
Well, that's a great question for men.
No, but I'm saying if the woman is also cool with it, like, to me, there's a level of responsibility that needs to be there. That's all. You disagree with that?
I don't disagree, but I mean, first of all, you can get pregnant even if you do pull out.
Okay, I'm talking about those that aren't taking precautions. So
not even pulling out.
Not even pulling out, no birth control, no condoms.
Okay. I mean, I think what do you think are the reasons why someone would be in that position?
Miseducation or lack of education.
Or resources.
Right, but I'm saying the best method for that, if you don't have the birth control pill and you don't have condoms, pull out, right? That's the next best thing, right? So why if they're not doing that, this is not an argument to keep or to terminate the pregnancy. I'm saying there's a level of responsibility to saying, hey man, you kind of fucked up there.
I agree. So there's a couple things there. I think that the majority of people who do have the resources and the education and all of those things in place to avoid getting pregnant, use them.
Okay.
If they
I
don't
agree
have,
with you there. Yes.
If they don't have them, it's because we've failed in terms of providing healthcare, providing birth control, providing resources for people to have access to those things.
I agree with you there too.
And so if they're in that situation where they do get pregnant, what are you suggesting? People shouldn't have sex?
No. I'm saying if you don't have condoms, right? And if you're in an unfortunate situation where your healthcare is lacking or it's not affordable or what have you, and you can't afford any form of birth control. I said that weird. Birth control.
Yeah.
And you're having sex, I wouldn't say actively, but you and your partner are having sex regularly. And you and your partner are agreeing not to pull out or not having this last, I guess, homemade method of
Sure. There's also family planning, which is timing. But again, that's an education thing.
Right.
Like
I'm just saying, I feel that now you don't need to be educated as, hey, if you come inside this person,
there's a good chance we could get pregnant.
You shouldn't do that.
So this is what I'm saying is I feel like that is a pretty rare circumstance, I think.
You're right. I'm just saying it's better than, No.
I'm saying I don't think there are a lot of people out there who are on no birth control whatsoever.
Oh, yeah.
And are doing that.
Yeah.
And taking that risk on a regular basis.
I'm saying in those circumstances, again, this is not to say this woman should be forced to keep the pregnancy. I'm not saying that. This isn't
especially if her partner didn't pull out.
I understand.
You're saying if they agreed.
I'm saying if this is an agreement and it's consensual, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, that's not even what I'm asking. I'm saying, is there a level of responsibility in there?
But again, what I'm saying is I feel like that is a very rare circumstance.
Okay.
I feel like people who don't want to get pregnant, they do know the basic biology of how you get pregnant, and I think they're trying to avoid it. This goes back to I don't think women are using abortion as a form of birth control.
But listen,
I don't think that's what's happening.
Peek behind the curtain.
Oh God.
I'm a master at the pull-out method.
Oh my God.
What's up, Mom?
Anyway.
She listens.
Okay. Okay. So yes, there's that whole argument about. So I guess that kind of answers what I was going to say about that common argument. Is I feel like the vast majority of people who have access to birth control use it. And the ones that don't, I think they probably do avoid trying to get pregnant with the resources they have available to them. And I forgot what I was going to say.
I want to make it clear that didn't have anything to do with pro-life, pro-choice. It was just a question.
I understand what you're saying.
Just asking about responsibility.
I just don't think that that happens very often.
I agree with you that the vast majority of individuals are doing their best to practice safe sex. Those that aren't trying to have a child. Right.
Yes.
And safe sex obviously could mean STDs and whatnot. Outside of that, I'm saying preventative measures for pregnancy. I think the vast majority of people utilize those, I guess, methods and materials out there that could be useful. But if in the event that there is an accidental pregnancy and you aren't in a position financially to raise this child, and you as the individual do not want to put your child in an adoption agency, because again, you might have the statistics on hand. My ignorant perception of adoption agency is that most people or kids that get adopted, I don't know that they fare well. I don't know. Maybe that's just like a media thing that I'm being fed, but I don't know. I'm just saying I can understand why a mother would say, or a woman will say, I can't afford this pregnancy. I don't think it would offer this child any good opportunities to succeed in life, any good measures to thrive.
Or even even more extreme than that.
Or
What if
for
having
me-
this child is going to make them homeless or
That-
put them into
right.
poverty?
Sure.
Like,
Yes.
I mean,
And I can understand why a woman would say, I also don't want someone else raising my child.
or
So,
just, I can't imagine. I'm not saying that. I don't think there's any easy choice if you're in this position, but I feel like giving your child up for an adoption after birth is just as traumatic.
yeah,
I mean,
I can
it's-
imagine.
Yeah.
And so I get it. I get these things. I get these reasons why someone would want to have an abortion. Moreover, I get reasons, especially in rape cases. I don't even think that should be an argument.
I
even
feel like
think
there's
that
been
should,
those exceptions for rape, incest, that sort of thing.
yeah,
In the
that
law
shouldn't even
written
be in. If anybody is protesting that, you are a monster.
Yeah.
Because especially incest, like what the fuck are we doing here?
Yeah. And
Like,
forcing
first of
the
all-
woman to raise a child that she never asked for. That
Well,
she never,
scientifically, can't that child have genetic
in
deficiencies?
cases of incest. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess it depends on how closely related.
I mean, look at
the parents are.
Joffrey, Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
He
right.
was a fucking crazy person.
I know. Yeah. No, but I think I feel like that's less contested. I feel like most people are on the same page. Maybe there's some pretty extreme, minority that feel like it shouldn't be permitted even in those cases. But I think generally speaking, most people are okay with exceptions for rape, incest, and also if it's a maternal health
Sure.
issue.
Yeah.
But I also feel like that's pretty rare. It's pretty rare that a mother is going to be at a super high risk of losing her life by continuing on with the pregnancy. It
Yes.
happens, but it's
Yes.
pretty rare.
Yes, I would
So
agree with you.
again, those are rare circumstances, but I'm talking about in general. I feel like another argument is if you don't want to get pregnant, you shouldn't be having sex. But like there are even married couples who have unwanted or accidental pregnancies. I have a friend who recently posted, she was very open about it. She posted on social media. She had an IUD after she had 2 kids. So do you know what that is?
Yeah, it's the internal thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's pretty
It's like the ring,
effective.
right?
It's different from the ring,
All right.
but your healthcare provider inserts it, and it's there for a long time, years even, maybe
Yeah.
before it has to be changed, and it provides like almost perfect birth control. And she got pregnant on an IUD, and she was married. She already had 2 kids who were maybe like 8, 10 years old, whatever, but they were not planning on having any more kids. And like, what do you do in that situation? And she was very open about saying, I realized how fortunate and privileged I was that yes, it was unexpected. We were going to have to tweak a few things in our family budget and whatnot, but they were in a position where they could make it work. And she pointed out that at the time that she found out that she was pregnant, her husband was in between jobs. So his healthcare hadn't like come into effect yet.
Right.
It was like a 6-week hold or something. And in that time, because it was an IUD pregnancy and it was high risk, they had to do ultrasounds every 2 weeks, which was not covered. She didn't have insurance, and she had to do it to make sure that she wasn't going to end up with a dangerous circumstance. And she was just saying, like, I can't imagine if we were not financially capable of doing this. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, I
Like,
understand. I get it.
And this is not someone who was irresponsible. This is not someone who was careless.
That's what they would say, though.
How?
They just would, because if you're taking a life away, that's all that. Look, that's what matters at the end of the day to them.
But what if it caused that family to be homeless and her 2 already existing children? It's not okay.
That's what they would say.
How about we provide some fucking social services to families in those situations if you're going to force them to have children?
Legitimate question. All right. And we're on record with an episode that we are basically agnostic or atheist or what.
Sure.
We're non-believers. And this is no disrespect to the believers, right? This is, again, I don't want to paint broad brushes here. So you could be, I know that there are religious people out there, especially those that are Catholic, because they're like the diet Christians, right? They're pretty much the holiday Christians.
Sometimes.
That don't, we watch Everybody Loves Raymond, that don't necessarily follow the Bible or the teachings or the scriptures or whatnot to the T. But, have you ever come in contact with a pro-life person that's not religious, because that to me seems like an oxymoron.
Yeah.
It seems really hard for me to think of or conceive of someone that's pro-life, that's atheist, because what is your argument? Because the science doesn't support that that's a human being when it's at conception. The science itself doesn't support that. So what the pro-life, with the majority of them, I guess, would use to back up their argument is scripture. But if you're an atheist, you don't have that.
Yeah, but they say, so I've read articles about this, about science being used on both sides to defend the position. But
there's no definitive science, is
right,
what I'm saying.
But they would say something like the heartbeat. And that was a recent piece of legislation that was, I think it was in Ohio, the heartbeat bill. I can't remember last year. But they were trying to make it illegal for any abortions to happen after a heartbeat was detectable, which is at like 6 weeks before some women even know that they're pregnant.
But a mosquito has a heartbeat. So we shouldn't kill a mosquito. We can't just say anything with a heartbeat. It's therefore illegal to kill it because there are...
Well, and they...
This device reconnects.
That was our Alexa.
It's a ghost. Clearly.
No, that was Alexa. What the fuck was that?
I have never heard that before. Anyways, yeah, I think, because again, there's the whole viability thing. It might have a heartbeat, but it's still completely dependent on being in the mother's womb.
Yes. Yeah, I just don't understand how you can use a heartbeat as any sort of, reasoning. Because then that you can extend that to other living things that have a heartbeat. But these individuals, some of these individuals, have no problem with hunting. They have no problem with...
Well, they're going to say because those aren't humans.
But it has a heartbeat.
But it's not a human with a heartbeat.
That's not what they're saying, though. They're saying it has a heartbeat.
And it's a human.
That's not what they're saying.
Okay.
At least that's not what the bill says.
The bill? Oh, the heartbeat bill? Yeah, well, I think it's understood that it's within the context of a human embryo.
Whatever. Anyways, so obviously we're going to get into the political sphere here. There is, obviously, this is how this conversation started, is that you did the sperm/phone bank thing. And
and then following that was the RNC, which had some pretty interesting speeches focused on pro-life issues. Even a nun spoke.
Yeah, what was with that? She had a terrible dad joke. She said, be careful what you pray for or something. Because
oh my God.
She said something to the effect that I was praying to God that I would really like to speak on this issue. And then I was asked to come speak about it. And I said, be careful what you pray for because you just might get it. I was, come on. That's the best you came up with?
Yeah.
Dad jokes are way better than that.
Yeah.
So you have a clip that you wanted me to pull up. This is from not this RNC.
From 2016.
This is from the debates between.
Well, just because we've been talking, from Trump and Clinton, their debate in 2016, because we've been talking about, the argument of when life begins and is it conception? Is it 20 weeks? Is it whatever? And I want to address the last kind of option I feel like people use, which is birth itself.
All right.
If you go with what Hillary is saying, in the 9th month, you can take the baby and rip the baby out of the womb of the mother just prior to the birth of the baby. Now, you can say that that's okay, and Hillary can say that that's okay, but it's not okay with me.
So, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with that statement, but as we just talked about, that's very rare.
That he described infanticide.
So what is that?
Like a murder of an infant?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
okay.
That's not a thing.
That's what I'm saying. Like that on surface sounds kind of reasonable, but what you're saying is that doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen.
Right.
9th month abortions are not a thing. That's
what
a
I'm saying.
full-term baby who's going to be delivered if there's any issue. Like if there's some issue with the mother's health or the baby's heartbeat is slow or what, and again, not medical professionals.
Right.
Maybe should have made that disclaimer at the beginning. My understanding of just things I learned going through my own pregnancy and things like that. At that point in the pregnancy, if you're 9 months, you're 36 to 40 weeks along. Our daughter was born at 37 weeks.
Right.
Because she was in a hurry, apparently. But if a child is going to be born or come out of the womb in any way, shape, or form in the 9th month, they're going to be delivered. They're not going to rip the baby apart limb from limb and rip it out of the woman. That's
what
not
I'm
a
saying.
thing.
That sound clip, I'm thinking, I'm like, no, that sounds reasonable, but this doesn't happen.
He did a follow-up interview shortly after that, and he doubled down on it, and he said, oh, you can imagine what you have to do to get the baby out. Like, trying to put in this, like, graphic imagery of, like, ripping apart a baby to get it. Like, no, you don't have to even, no. Like, they would induce the mother, and the baby would be delivered.
Yeah. But that's fear-mongering. That's all that is. And
people hear that, and it's so graphic and like objectively awful to think
saying.
about
when
that.
When I hear that, I'm not scared when I hear that because I know that doesn't happen. But if anybody said, I don't agree with 9-month abortion, I'd say, 9-month term abortion, I'd say, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that you wouldn't have to.
Right.
You wouldn't have to abort
That's not
that
even
child.
worth mentioning in this conversation.
Right.
And it drives me nuts. And I've seen people still posting that shit now.
Well,
coming into the
We've
2020
talked about this.
election.
Look, I don't want to. We're gonna have an episode closer to the election about the election. I don't want to be the person to. You already have. I don't want to sort of dive into my political views at the moment. But we've touched on this before. This is no secret. A lot of Trumpers, not all, a lot, aren't educated. And when they hear something like that, sounds good to me, and they don't fucking research further. They just take what he says on face value, no follow-up, no nothing, and says, yeah, that's good. That works for me. That works for my immediate sensibilities.
I don't know what to say to that.
Do you disagree?
No, I mean, I see that pattern too. But that doesn't make it any less frustrating.
Of course it's frustrating. But this is the problem, is that he has this appeal. And again, we're getting into political talk. He has an appeal to his base where he knows what buzzwords to use to really ignite them. And I don't necessarily think that's different to the left either. There is a lot of that too. But when it comes to Trump, if there's one thing he's good at, he's really good at enticing people to respond based on their emotions irrationally.
Yeah, based on lies
and misinformation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. That's all.
I mean, they're also making it sound like Biden is like gunning for 9th-month abortions, like it's a positive like thing to strive for, and he's not even. And part of the reason why I knew we were going to get into the political piece is because Biden himself has evolved on this issue over time. I mean, he was a devout Catholic, and he probably still is. But I just think it's an interesting example of someone evolving on this issue and learning more, and not necessarily taking it at face value like you just described.
Yeah, and I think that's that shows what someone who knows how to do sort of a sense of introspection and follow-up research, look at the data. That's important.
Right.
This goes to anybody that's still denying that mask wearing is a thing. Look at the data. And when it comes to reproductive rights, look at the data. I think that is why I'm so inclined to be sort of just, obviously, because it baffles me that we're relying on people that don't fit the bill to make the decisions, right? So if you wanted someone's help in a plumbing sphere with your plumbing, you're not going to talk to the secretary of the plumbing company, right? That secretary's job is just do secretary work.
Secretarial.
Like, whatever. I'm not trying to minimize the job of a secretary, but
just different tasks, different skills.
Mail collecting, forwarding calls, whatnot. They don't know anything about plumbing, and if they do, it's very little based on their surroundings. They probably picked it up here and there, but they don't know how to evaluate plumbing. You would go to the plumber.
Of course.
When it comes to abortion rights, I'm not going to old white men.
Yeah.
I'm just not. I'm not going to men. Mm-hmm. I don't know enough, and sure, I could probably find myself accidentally running into someone in one of those crazy churches. What is the
evangelical?
Yeah,
churches?
What's the one with that pickets funerals?
The Westboro,
Westboro.
Baptist.
Yeah, I could find myself accidentally talking to one of them, and I'd say, well, you would know, you're a woman. But, like, you know what I'm saying? I don't know that these issues should be in the hands of men. I think they should be in the hands of women, and there should be differing opinions amongst, for lack of a better way to put it, a committee, and here I am, a man, telling what we should do. A committee talking about, hashing this out, for lack of a better way to put it, or coming to a consensus. Because I'm telling you right now, men will not be able to do that. And that's why these laws are so outrageous, because they say, yeah, that works. That works for me. That sounds right.
When
But if a woman came up with the law about dick laws, like, you can't.
I was gonna say, men are the ones getting the
Cialis.
women pregnant, and
But I'm saying
men aren't held to the same accountability at all for an unwanted pregnancy, even though it's probably their fault.
Imagine if a bunch of women in office drew up a bill that said you can't take Blue Chew more than twice a month. Right.
Yeah. I mean, why is that so readily acceptable? But birth control is debatable.
Because having an erection doesn't necessarily...
But it helps you have sex, which leads to pregnancy.
Right.
Right. So we're okay with encouraging and allowing men to have more sex.
Well, do you want me to get into the nuances here?
Oh, God. Okay.
Do you really want me to get into
Okay.
You might not be heterosexual and you want to have an erection with your partner.
Okay.
I'm
yes,
just saying, right?
But
we would still say this is outrageous that you're making these decisions for us.
Right.
Right.
And sometimes women take birth control to control their acne.
Or their period when they're young, right?
Right.
The severity of it.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Like, it's not, but private businesses they don't want to even pay for birth control, which would prevent the unwanted pregnancy and the need for abortion in the first place. Like, this is where it comes into the whole, like, creating these broad brush federal laws, like overturning Roe v. Wade and defunding Planned Parenthood that provides services, not just abortion, but many other services, and women's health care that help prevent pregnancies, give people proper education and forms of birth control that's affordable and readily available, to avoid having to ever make this agonizing decision in the first place. Like, nobody wants to be in this position.
Yeah.
And
I don't know.
I feel like if you're going to be that strong about it on the pro-life side, and like I said at the beginning, I can sympathize with it, because I personally couldn't have imagined making that decision for myself. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to project that on other people, because my situation is completely different.
It's anecdotal evidence. That's
Right.
the definition. Yeah, I get it. I get it.
So, but I guess my biggest gripe is that, and the thing that I appreciated about the gentleman that I spoke to when I was calling voters in Wisconsin, was that he opened by saying sanctity of life in all of its forms at all stages. So, because I just feel like if you're gonna, like, die on the hill of life begins at conception, period, end of story, it's never okay to terminate a pregnancy for any reason, then at least support other policies and systems that will provide for those children past the point of birth.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Because
get
then
it.
you're not pro-life, you're just pro-birth.
Yeah. Look, I get it. And I can't... I don't have a dog in the race here, right? And that's... Obviously, I should, because my child will more than likely be affected by this. And it's something that I just don't have. And I'm not sure that that's necessarily unfair of me to say. Like, I'm not crying unfairness here. I'm just saying I've never had to live through this. How could I understand it, right? And I think that's my point about old white men making this decision, because, hey, neither have you guys, right? So,
and you never will have to.
Right. So we should leave it in the hands of people that either have or maybe have an extensive history of this, right? When state troopers, at least in Rhode Island, rumor has it, I don't know, are interviewed and whatnot, and if a state trooper to be or candidate says, yes, I've smoked pot before, they sort of want that, because not that they want them to be high, but it's, you're not a liar, and you have experience with this substance, you may be able to tell better if someone's high or something. They value certain segments of the experience, right? It's the same thing with women. Have you been on birth control? Why have you been on birth control? Not that it's any of my business, but if you can illuminate these issues better, we can maybe come up with better laws or better policies.
I think it's been illuminated pretty clearly.
No, I'm saying if someone in the higher up, right? Someone in the Supreme Court.
Roe v. Wade did that.
No.
They proved that it was.
I'm saying the next candidate, if Ginsburg should go, I think it would be beneficial to be a woman.
Yeah, that's why this election is so important, because you can guarantee what the Supreme Court justice is going to look like if we have one candidate in office and what the options are if we have the other candidate in office.
All right. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
I mean, there's so much more, but I know we can't talk about it forever.
Of importance.
Well, I guess the only other thing, because we keep treading back into the political waters, the only other thing that came to mind when I was thinking about this was the fact that a lot of pro-life people are also conservative. The fact that Roe v. Wade they actually found, when you said that, it reminded me, that the right to a person's privacy when it comes to their reproductive activity and their family planning and basically their sex life and their decision to reproduce or not is private, and it's protected as a constitutional right.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it falls under the language in the Constitution about your right to privacy. Specifically, the language obviously in the Constitution isn't about reproductive rights or family planning, but that's what the court found, was that these issues fell into your rights, your constitutional rights to privacy.
If only they had those same rights with my internet history. If only. Well, we would like to know how you feel about this issue. If you would like to contact us with your thoughts, we'd love to hear it, whether it's on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, on the Reddit thread, or if you just want to shoot us an email, that's fine. Again, I'm not trying to be dismissive of the conversation. I know it's important, and I'm not belittling it at all. It's just, as I feel hard pressed as a male to really insert my opinion on this, because at the end of the day, I, as an individual, am not affected by it. I'm just not. And so obviously you, Cindy, have more of a voice and an opinion, a stronger one on this than I ever could. So
yeah, well, and I'm also all fired up about the election, even though we're trying not to make it all about that. I mean, I know that it's impossible to get away from it, and that's not our intention, is to, yell at people about voting or who they're going to vote for. But this is one issue that really does, the fact that we're raising a daughter, this hits home, and it's something that we do feel passionate about.
Hey, I mean, if you're going to be upset and Trump gets elected again and he's trying to go for a third term, you kind of should want that, because then it could be Obama versus Trump. Right?
I don't want that.
No, I'm saying if Trump's like,
not that I don't want Obama. I don't want that for him.
Imagine if that passed and they said, you know what, try to get him in a third term. Let's remove that, that whatever amendment it is in the Constitution. Let's remove that and let him run for a third term. If I'm Obama, I'm saying fucking game on. Let's go. Yeah. Because I feel like Obama would slaughter him in an erection.
I would hope.
An erection. That too.
Perfect.
BlueChew.com.
Him and his tiny hands.
Yes. That being said, take care of your erection, gentlemen, for the election.
There you go.
If you like what you heard, we appreciate it if you give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And if you're not listening on Apple Podcasts and you're listening on another platform, you can feel free to head over to the Facebook page, facebook.com/whileshe'snapping, and give us a 5-star review there. As mentioned, we are on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, basically wherever you get your podcasts fixed from. We appreciate the word of mouth too. If you can spread the word, if you liked what you've heard and you want us to talk about other other topics, you can first get in contact with us and suggest those topics. And hey, pass this podcast along to your friends that you think may be interested in the topics that we've covered. If you're thinking to yourself, yeah, these guys are cool, but what the fuck is Rhode Island? Where's that from? We have an episode on that. So you can dig back into the archives and listen to an entire episode, maybe about a little over an hour, about where we're from. You want to take over the rest of the socials?
Sure. We're on Facebook.
I just said that.
I know. You kind of already did them. Facebook.com/while she's napping. On Instagram at while she's napping. On Twitter at she's napping pod. Or our email is whileshe'snapping@gmail.com.
We appreciate the feedback. We appreciate the listenership. And we appreciate your patience through this episode. Don't know what we're talking about next week, but even more reasons to log on to the socials and find out.
Yep.
So until next week, thanks for listening. Take it easy.
Bye.